This is Biology 2, Chapter 15, Part 2 on evolution. In this portion of the video lecture, we will be taking a look at multiple lines of evidence that support the theory of evolution. The best record that we have that things have lived on this planet before we have, of course, is the fossil record. Now remember, the fossil record is not complete, but it is the best physical evidence that we have that shows biological change over time. So we can take a look at different traits that are found along lines of descent in the fossil record. Derived traits. These are considered newly evolved features in a line of descent. Derived traits will not appear in a common ancestor. A great example of derived traits would be feathers for birds. Birds are a descendant of the dinosaurs. Dinosaurs do not have feathers, but birds do. They are an outgrowth from the scales of the reptile. So feathers would be considered a derived trait because they are newer. Ancestral traits, however, are found all along the line of descent for an organism. So ancestral traits are primitive features. They do appear in common ancestors. Here in the diagram that you see, these are the teeth of the hominid family of which we are a part of. And you can see, no matter if the hominid was herbivore, carnivore, or omnivore, we all have generally the same types of teeth in our mouth. So that is found all along the lines of descent. So the teeth of hominids would be considered an ancestral trait. We can also take a look at comparing the anatomy of common animals that are around today. Homologous structures. These are structures that are made from the same material but used for a different job. So they're the same form, but they're used for a different purpose. Homologous traits are inherited along a line of descent. So, for example, the human forearm bone that you see on the very far right, with the humerus, radius, ulna, carpals, metacarpals, phalanges. Those bones are also found in shrews and sheep and seals and birds and bats. They may be shaped differently because the forearm, example for a bat, is used for flying, whereas the forearm of a dog is used for running, and the forearm of a human is used for grasping. But all of the same bones are there. So that's why we use that prefix of homo, because homo means the same. So same material, different job. Vestigial structures. These are kind of question marks in the organism. These are organs or structures that appear to not really have any type of function. So they are reduced forms of functional structures. Those structures or organs did have a purpose in an ancient ancestor, but is now useless to the present organism. Snakes, although they are considered limbless reptiles, they do have some vestigial arm and leg bones that are still present from their ancient ancestors that did use appendages to walk. Likewise, even though whales no longer walk upon land, their ancestors did, and they still have remnants of a pelvic bone, which is your hips, and a femur, which is the thigh bone. The human appendix is another type of vestigial organ. It used to be part of the digestive system called the cecum, and it held a lot of very powerful digestive enzymes. We no longer need those digestive enzymes, so the sac has been reduced to kind of a flap of tissue that doesn't have much function. So vestigial organs are reduced forms or structures. Now, we can also look at opposites in the fossil record, in analogous structures. These are structures that are made from different materials but they are performing the same job. So analogous structures are different in form, but serve the same purpose. Now, analogous structures are not inherited or passed down through a line of descent. For example, wings. Wings are used for flight. Birds have wings and insects have wings. So analogous structures that shows that similar features can evolve independently in different lines of descent. So again, here we have in the diagram insect wings and bird wings, both used for flight, but made out of completely different materials. We can also take a look at very early development of vertebrate animals in particular. Remember, vertebrate animals have a backbone. All vertebrate embryos show many homologous structures, and we all develop in fairly similar ways during the first few stages of development. Depending on if it's an amphibian, a bird, or mammals, we all tend to, within the first few stages of development, look very similar. So this shows, again, that vertebrate ancestors are related, and all vertebrate animals are related, whether it be very closely or very distantly, because we develop very similarly in the first few stages. Nowadays, with the advent of technology, we can actually look at the biochemistry between different lines of descent and actually compare the DNA that's found in each line of descent. There is a molecule that is found in every single aerobic organism, from algae all the way up to ourselves, and that molecule is called cytochrome C. This shows that and makes logical sense to think, instead of reinventing the wheel and reinventing all of these molecules, that the same one would be made for aerobic organisms. So the instructions in the DNA would be the same. Evolution is also very closely linked with climate and what the planet itself is doing. Animals will adapt in similar ways because they tend to live in a very similar environment or a similar ecosystem or biome. These two organisms here on the left, of course, we have the North American rabbit, and on the right you have the South American mara. The mara is more deer-like, but it lives in a forest environment much like the North American rabbit. They have similar feeding strategies and reproductive strategies and similar kind of foraging habits because they tend to live in the same general type of ecosystem. So we can take a look at studying where plants and animals are on the planet and take a look at what's called biogeography to find those links and connections to lines of descent. With biological change over time comes adaptations. Adaptations increase reproductive success. Remember, reproductive success is part of the principles of natural selection. So variations that are inherited that are an advantage will be more than likely passed on to the next generation. And evolutionary fitness is the contribution that one trait makes to the next generation. And so adaptations that make an animal more evolutionary fit means that that animal will survive and reproduce, and that their offspring will also survive and reproduce, because these adaptations are an advantage. Some examples of this: camouflage. This is kind of a blending into the environment. If either a prey item is camouflaged, they can remain hidden, and if a predator is camouflaged, perhaps their prey will not see them. Mimicry is another type of adaptation. When you mimic something, you copy it. So in mimicry, one species evolves to resemble another. And usually in this mimic pair, one is harmful and the other is harmless. The mimic is usually the one that is harmless. If you can look like something that's bad, predators may avoid you. The top example there, we have the coral snake and the California king snake. California king snake on the right, not poisonous. Coral snake on the left, very poisonous. Predators that don't see very well in shades of color. Notice the banding pattern, and that's what keeps them away from either the coral snake or the California king snake. The two insects on the bottom. On the right, we have the monarch butterfly, which is poisonous to, or does not taste very well, to many other birds or reptiles or amphibians. They get this kind of icky tasting secretion from the milkweed plant. So they have this nice kind of bright orange and white pattern. Now the viceroy butterfly, which is on the right hand side, does not have this capability, does not feed off the milkweed plant, and would be awfully tasty to anything that would choose to eat it. However, because it looks very similar to a monarch, many predators avoid it. Antimicrobial resistance is a problem that pharmaceutical companies are dealing with today. Bacteria are becoming resistant to the medicines that kill them, the antibiotics. Bacteria live for a very short amount of time, and they can reproduce quite prolifically in that short amount of time. Mutation rates tend to be high, and those little changes may make an antibiotic ineffective or not work at all. So this is a problem in the pharmaceutical industry. There is a lot of money and time that goes into making an antibiotic, and these little buggers of the bacteria are evolving too fast for us to keep up. So this has been Chapter 15, Part 2 on evolution.